Hello, 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 and welcome back to another video. I'm Abby, and today I'm doing a story time on how I got the golden plunger. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why does she have a golden plunger? Well, I don't just have one golden plunger. I have two golden plungers. How do I have these? Well, it's a little game called Fear Factor that my church throws every single year at our lock-in. What's a lock-in? It's where you spend all night in the church building, playing games, eating food, hanging out with friends, and playing Fear Factor. Now, I know that most churches don't do Fear Factor, but it's a big thing at our church. And if you win, you get a golden plunger. So, it's a big deal. So, I'm going to tell you about the second time I won a golden plunger, because the first time, it's a good story, which I'll probably say. But the second time, it was my very last year at lock-in, and I was a senior that year. And usually I get out because they have a lot of food things, and I don't do food, but I'll get to that in a minute. So usually we start off, we play a bunch of games, have fun, hang out. And then once everyone gets there, we start the first round. Usually the first round is we all have to stay in one part of the building while all of the adults, they go around the building and hide a bunch of these little tiny figures all throughout the entire church building. So there's like 20 of these little figures, and it's like they're tiny, they're like an inch. And they're in an entire building. So everyone is and all the lights are turned off, so you can't see anything. And you're running around, feeling all the pews and on the floor, and dumping out buckets and pots and pans and stuff, trying to find them. Well, this year I've been there a few years, so I kind of know where they hide things, because they're not that original. Kidding, they are. Anyway, so we have these big vases in the lobby, and they always put at least one of them in there. Well, I was too slow. Well, no, I checked one, and it wasn't in there. But by the time I was checking that one, someone was checking the other one, and they found one, because there was one in there, because they always hide one in there. Anyway, so then I had to go to a plan B, so I went to the auditorium, and I was feeling around under all the pews, and I came up to one, and they had like this shelf at the bottom of it, and I reached in and I grabbed it. And the rule is, as soon as you find one, you go straight to back to the room we were in, and you just wait there for everyone else, because not everyone's gonna get them, and it's not fun being the first one out. But I never was, so that was a good thing. Anyway, so that eliminated one person. So then the next round, I'm not really sure on the order of these, but I got most of them correctly. So the next is a game of spoons. And if you don't know what spoons is, it's where all the spoons are laying out on a table, and everyone's like around the spoons, and you have a deck of cards, and you start with 4 cards in your hand. And the point of the game is you're passing the card from person to person, looking at it, and your goal is to get 4 of a kind. And once you get 4 of a kind, you reach and grab a spoon. And if you don't get a spoon, then you're out. So we eliminated a few people from this round. And then the next round, there was like a good 10 of us left or so. I don't know how many. I didn't pay attention. I just cared that I was still in the game. But anyway, so the next round, it was we were all sitting on chairs, and we had a bowl and a cup in front of us. Inside the bowl, we had a bunch of Cheetos. And so we had to take off our shoes and socks, and then they said, okay, you have a minute, and you have a minute to pick up the Cheetos with your toes and put them in the cup. As many as you can in that minute. So everyone's doing this. Your feet are getting disgusting with Cheeto dust, but it's fine if you're winning. If not, then you're just this Cheeto feet. Anyway, so I ended up staying into the game, and so it went to the next round. And the next round, we all know the fun game where you put an Oreo on your head and you have to shimmy it down to your face to eat it. Well, all of us were lined up on chairs, and I've done this a few times, so I kind of have a technique. Well, my brother one year, he put a cookie on his head, and he doesn't really like cookies, but minor details. Anyway, he puts a cookie on his head, and he flicked his head back, and it landed right on his cheek. So then he was like, and then he ate it. So then I was like, I'm gonna try that technique. So I hit my head up, and it fell right here, and I was like, oh sweet. I ate it real quick. So it took me like a matter of like 5 seconds to do that, and I was like, yeah, I'm the first one. So then I stood up and I went to go stand and watch everyone else do it. Well, a few minutes passed and no one was doing it. All their cookies were falling on the ground. But I was like, hey, can I try it again? Well, then they're like, yeah, sure. So I put another cookie on my head and I got it down. And I was like, I'm a genius. Anyway, so I had done it 3 times before anyone else has gotten out. And then finally people started getting it. And then after that, it took a while, but we ended up getting more people out. And then the next round, it was, I want to say, so it was the blindfold food challenge. And I was like, oh no, I'm going to get out on this round because I do not do food. Anytime there's a blindfold and food, I'm just instantly starting to cry because back then, whenever I went to church camp, we had to do blindfold food testing where we had our partner had to feed us. And I am a very, very picky person. Luckily, my partner was really nice, and he only fed me pop rocks, but I was still crying. And then every year there's always some kind of food element in Fear Factor, so that's usually when I get out because I'm not good at it and I start crying. Anyway, so this year, I went in there last because they were like, we're gonna make the senior go last because I was the only senior that actually showed up to stuff that year. And so they put a blindfold on me and I'm like, oh no, I don't want to do this. And then they're like, okay, open your mouth. And I'm like, and so then they shove it in my mouth. Well, no, actually, yeah, well, they put it in my mouth. And I was like, and I spit it up because it was gross. Because it was a salted pickle, and I don't like pickles. And I was like, it's a pickle, and they're like, what kind of pickle? I was like, I don't know what kind of pickle it is. It was a salted pickle, I guess. So I didn't get a point on that. And then they let me hold the spoon from now on because they were not having luck trying to put it in my mouth. And so then I was holding the spoon, and I touched it to my tongue, and I was like, oh, it's ketchup. So I got 1 point, right? And so then we went to the next round. They were like, okay, this is something we're going to have to put in your mouth. I was like, oh, okay. So then they stuck it in my mouth, and it was like a chip, and I was like, oh, this is not bad. So I was eating it, and they're like, I was like, it's a chip. And they're like, but what kind of chip? I was like, I don't know that. It was a banana chip of all things. So, of course, I didn't get a point for that. And then the last thing they did was raw mushroom soup. Yeah, I didn't get that point either. So I got 1 point. I was like, well, I'm doomed. I'm out of this competition. It's over for me. Stupid food always gets me out. Anyway, well, I ended up taking off my blindfold. I'm sweating, and I'm like, bad food. And then they're like, well, we have good news. You made it to the next round because the person before you forfeited and didn't eat any of them. So she's out. And I was like, yeah, thank you so much. And so, of all things, I made it past the food. And I was like, wow, it's like a straight shot from here. Well, there's like 4 of us left. And this is where, it's a race, and everyone is at like a different table on different sides of the room, and you have this like 90 or 100 piece puzzle, and what you have to do is as soon as they say go, you open up your box and you start putting the puzzle pieces together, and whoever gets done last is out. And so it's like a race against time. Everyone else who's not participating, they're like running around. Oh, you're doing so good. Oh, she's ahead of you. So the pressure's getting to you because you're like, oh no, that person's ahead of me. And then they're like, oh, Abby and this person are about even. I'm like, oh no, and they're about to finish. Oh no! So I'm rushing and putting them trying to put the pieces in. It doesn't go, and then I'm like, oh, it doesn't go there. So I put it to a different place. I'm like, oh, it goes there. Well, I ended up finishing first. So I was like, whoa, I'm a champion. Well, then I think 2 people got out on that round, and so then it was the last round. In past years, the last round is where the night before they would tie up a t-shirt in rubber bands and knots and all these weird things, and then they would get it all wet and freeze it overnight. Well, usually the last event was whoever got the t-shirt on first would win. So they would have to thaw the shirt with their body and then untie it and then stick it on them first. Well, this year they decided to switch it up. They had these big pots, and they filled it completely up with rice. They had 2 pots, and they filled them both up with rice. And in each pot, they had 5 little red rice things. They had 5 little individual rices that were red. And they were buried somewhere in this pot. So you had to dig and dig and dig and dig and dig until you found the 5 rice. Well, we started off, we were going and digging, and then she found like the first 3, and I hadn't found any. And then all of a sudden, I was like, oh, I found one. 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 And then I had found the last one, and then I was like, I won! I won! It was a big deal because this was the first golden plunger that I had actually won by playing Fear Factor, and it was like the best year to do it because I was the only senior. It was the last year to do it, and go off with a bang. Am I right? So I ended up getting the golden plunger. The other person got the silver plunger, which is not as cool, but you know, it's second place. So I got the golden plunger. And that's how I became a winner that day, when I got the golden plunger. So, there's a bunch of other lock-in stories I can tell you about how I got the first golden plunger. It's not as long as the story, but it's still a good one. And I might combine that with hide and seek, because hide and seek's a big thing in my life. But I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to comment down below what your favorite part was. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, and like the video. Bye!